CNN is facing a slew of lawsuits alleging racial discrimination by former and current African-American employees. Yesterday, we told you about a class action lawsuit that was filed. But even before this latest filing, the network and its parent company, Time Warner, were dealing with other discrimination lawsuits filed by individuals. One of those lawsuits was filed in October by former CNN employee Omar Butcher. Butcher, a devout Christian, has accused the network of religious and racial discrimination. He worked at CNN for 5 years until he was fired in 2015. We reached out to CNN for comment, but they declined to speak. Joining me now on Skype from Atlanta to discuss Omar's case and the alleged bias practices at CNN is his attorney, Edward D. Buckley. Edward, welcome to TV1.
Good morning, and you can call me Ed.
All right, Ed. So exactly what is Omar alleging took place that is the basis of his discrimination lawsuit?
Well, Mr. Butcher was at CNN for approximately 5 years, starting as a writer, and he was repeatedly passed over for advancement opportunities and training opportunities, and he earnestly sought training. He found himself training people who ended up advancing over him. So he was not able to get advancement, first of all, but then secondly, he objected to disparate treatment based on race. He objected to HR, and he objected specifically to a comment made by one of the on-air people, which he thought was a racially disparaging comment. And he objected to it to that individual. He objected to it to HR, and he was promptly terminated. He also had objected and had been objecting to profanity in the workplace, which was essentially taking the Lord's name in vain, and he, as a devout Christian, expressed offense at that. So ultimately, he was terminated, and we brought a case based on race discrimination, religious discrimination, and retaliation.
A lot of newsrooms, cursing takes place. I've been in the business since graduating from Texas A&M in 1991. There's no word I probably haven't heard in a newsroom. And so is he essentially saying that he did not that cursing in the newsroom was discriminatory?
He is not saying that generic cursing. He was expressly concerned about the use of God's name in vain, and he asked people to stop, at least around him, doing that. And in fact, it seemed, according to him, that the conduct accelerated in sort of a deliberate effort to get his goat.
When you talk about being passed over, so when you say that he sought out opportunities for training, so he articulated that, did he do so in writing, did he do so in email, and is he saying that he wanted to perfect his craft and no assistance was provided?
Well, this is mostly orally, but also he would have meetings. He would say, how can I improve? I'd like to have training. He got some informal training, but he couldn't get the formal training that he needed. And of course, this is an inherent problem in race cases where somebody gets passed over for promotion because they don't have enough training, but they're not getting the training that they need in order to get promoted. So that was the problem there.
When we talk about the last question here, we talk about the racial discrimination aspect. Have you had any response thus far from CNN?
Their lawyers have contacted me just to let me know that they're handling the lawsuit. They have not, there hasn't been any deep dive into the facts. They have not admitted or denied the things that have been stated here, at least not yet. We expect to hear from them shortly on that.
And so you haven't begun discovery or depositions?
We have not started that process yet.
Okay. Last question. I'm sorry. The class action lawsuit filed. Do you plan, does Omar plan to become a part of that class action lawsuit, or will you maintain a separate lawsuit?
Well, I think for now we're going to maintain the separate suit. We're going to watch that case carefully and see its progress. That case has a number of hurdles to go through. One of the things is they need to obtain class certification. There's a prayer for class certification in it. That's a steep hill to climb in the 11th Circuit. So whether or not there will actually be a class is something that we'll learn significantly down the road.
Okay. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Real quick, going to our panel here. I'll start with you, Scott. Again, lawsuit filed, class action lawsuit filed. There was an employee out in Los Angeles who filed a lawsuit. Another employee in Atlanta filed a lawsuit. According to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, a number of other black employees filed EEOC complaints. If you're an attorney in this case, does all of those other legal actions assist in trying to obtain that class action status?
Well, each case stands on its own, notwithstanding what's been filed, and whether you can use that in any individual case. It'll be up to those individual plaintiffs as to whether they want to join the class action. It is a high bar. They may want to go it alone. But the reality is that these lawsuits happen regularly in major organizations. That's the first thing. And the plaintiffs have a high bar in proving a racial animus, in this case a religious animus, if you will, and whether there were race neutral or religious neutral reasons for why the individual wasn't promoted, why he was fired, was the record or his file, his employment file, well documented. All of those factor in. And so it's going to be a long process, but it's going to be a fact-intensive process.
Well, and Bill, yesterday with the attorney who filed the class action lawsuit, he said that information that was turned over by the network showed what he said was disparities when it came to pay, lack of African Americans in VP level jobs as well. That he said was proof from them that African Americans were being denied opportunity to advance in the network.
Disparate impact, which has been one of the most important legal doctrines, which has been constantly under assault by conservatives, who always want to narrow the parameters and look at each case in isolation, as opposed to what you're describing, which is there a pattern? Is there a pattern in practice at CNN that goes beyond the individual thoughts of a particular racist? But is there a pattern of racial discrimination? And that's what I'm hoping that this class action really looks into.
And I wonder how the religious aspect plays into it, right? Because you think about it, he's not just talking about racial discrimination, but also because he's a devout Christian, he was treated differently. So how does that impact his ability as an individual to get a fair trial? And also, should he be a part of the class action lawsuit as well? Because the complaint's somewhat different.
Well, I'll tell you this here. I mean, I don't care what the industry is. The reality is this here for African Americans, whether it's in the case of media companies, whether you're talking about other corporate jobs. At the end of the day, when you begin to look at, as you go higher and higher and higher and higher in these companies, it gets rarefied air, and you begin to see fewer and fewer African Americans going up, and you have to ask, how in the world are we able to train other people to do certain jobs, and next thing you know, they get hired above us, and so this goes beyond what's happening again with these lawsuits against CNN. This points to, again, the inability to have African Americans who are ascending to not only CEO level jobs but also SVP, EVP, and you name it. And I've heard the exact same thing from brothers and sisters in law firms, in companies, Silicon Valley, and you name it, and that's a fundamental problem. And that also, and this is the key that the audience has to also understand, this also ties directly also into income inequality, because when you have African Americans who are in essence limited at jobs, and let's just say $80,000, $90,000, $100,000, then all of a sudden you have white counterparts who are making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, $1 million, and those jobs also come with stock options and benefits. You now are impacting your children, someone else's children's children, from generational wealth by being limited from opportunities today. And so I think a lot of times we only think in terms of the present term, but we don't actually connect those dots to say that, wait a minute, there's a difference between the ability to generate more income for a high-level job, and then all of a sudden you can send your kids to college debt-free, or when your kids graduate and then they decide to get married, you're paying the down payment on their home. So this thing is much deeper than just, well, I couldn't get another job. Real quick, 20 seconds.
Real quick, that's agree, but I also want to just emphasize, particularly for the viewers, this is why it's dangerous to look at these cases by themselves. Because what happens is that there's a tendency to dismiss the facts around individual cases. That wasn't a problem. This is what happens.
As opposed to culture.
As opposed to culture and patterns that exist within corporate America.
Kickstart your day at 7 and get the news you need from the perspective you want. NewsOne Now with Roland Martin. Every weekday morning at 7 on TV1.